Hi, I'm Michelle Johnson of Have Color Will Travel. Welcome back to my studio. It's Valentine's season, and I know that that can be kind of triggering for some folks. Love is messy. Love is hard to find. Love is irritating. Uh, Maybe sometimes love is kind, and I think that kindness comes in Valentines. I love making Valentines, and not just for those romantic partners that we might have in our lives, but I love making Valentines for friends, for family, for anyone, because it's just the perfect time to get your hands messy with some paint and to create something for someone else. I like to create cards at Valentine's Day. So today we're going to be doing a card watercolor, spontaneous, very intuitive. I have no idea how this is going to turn out. I just thought, I'm so tired of those really tidy and neat Valentine tutorials that we see all of the time. Like, look at how pretty and sweet and cute and just, cookie cutter these love marks are. That's not what Valentine's Day feels like for me. Love is messy. Love is chaotic. Love is spontaneous. Love is very intuitive. And so today I'd like to work us through a watercolor experience that hopefully, you never know when you're doing intuitive watercolor, hopefully it will come out into some beautiful thing that you can share with your Valentines. I have two special ones, my son and my husband. So those are the people I am creating for today. You might be creating for your dog, your cat, your best friend, your partner, your favorite teacher, yourself. So today we're going to get a little bit messy. It's a very similar tutorial to one that I did back during the winter holidays, and I'll link that. I think that's going to be right there. I'll link that back. If you enjoy this process, you'll enjoy it with all kinds of shapes. That one was with more of a triangular shape. Today we're working with hearts because Valentine's Day. So let's get messy with some Valentines. For today's fun watercolor exploration card making experience, I've got two types of watercolor paper already prepped. Arches 100% cotton watercolor paper, cold pressed 140 pound, and Canson XL, not cotton at all, cold press watercolor paper 140 pound. This is cut to a greeting card size, which you can see right down here, 8 1/4 by 5 1/4. This is cut to an invitation size, which is 5 1/4 by 4 inch. These are not the card sizes. These are the front faces, which these will become the decoration on the front, or the giveable art is what I like to think of them as. And allowing for a border of color with the colorful cardstock you might use. I've already chosen two pieces, kind of a deep pink cardstock and a lavender cardstock. I've also got 3 paint brushes that I'm using today. I didn't choose them in any particular order. These are just ones I like to paint with. An Aqua Elite 8 round and same thing, Aqua Elite 4 round. And then a quill size 1. This is a Harmony quill size 1. I enjoy them. I don't know if I'll use all 3. I just have them out so they're ready to go. On my channel, I like to show art being made with a variety of types of materials, which is why I have both artist grade paper and student grade paper going on my projects most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time, if I can manage to fit it in screen, which is why we're going to be working with both artist grade paint, a variety of colors, and then we're also going to be working with some good old reliable Crayola watercolors. Of this artist grade variety that I have 2 Tambi Ganzai paints, a warm red and a cool red. This is an alizarin crimson by Winsor Newton Cotman. This is Opera Pink by Daniel Smith. Madder Lake Deep, a really cool, I shouldn't say really cool, because cool, but I mean like I like it a lot. It's interesting, exciting to me, not temperature. A really cool red. And Quinn Purple Blue, which is a, I think it's Van Gogh. Yep, it's a Van Gogh color. I also brought out Daniel Smith's Ultramarine Violet. It's a, well, you'll see what kind of color it is. And I'm curious to see how it will interact with these other colors. I have no idea. I've never mixed
these colors together. And then I also have a Chinese white so that I can maybe tone down some of the brilliancy going on with my paints. We also need to have a paper towel, as with all watercolor projects. We definitely need our spray bottle today because we are doing a intuitive and go with the flow project. And I like to have 2 glasses of clean water or cups of water, one for rinsing, and then this one I keep an eyedropper in full of fluid to re-wet my colors as they inevitably begin to dry, because I live in Texas, so my watercolors dry up really, really quickly. I've also used some frog tape. You can use any kind of tape. I stick it to my pants or to my sweaters or to my shirts to let it be a little less tacky. This is a board so that I can tape it to. This is just something I picked up at TJ Maxx. And then you're going to want to have some colorful cardstock. Not necessarily these colors, these are the ones I chose. This is an 8.5 by 11 sheet that will work for the greeting card size. This is one that is cut down to size. This is 8.5 by 5.5. There you go. All right, so those are the materials. Let's get painting.
Before beginning to paint in earnest, you have to wet your colors. The more you let a little bit of water set on top of your watercolor palettes, the more juicy your paint will be. So you can see this is hyperlapsed. There was some wait time in between dipping my brush onto the palette or into the pan of paint and beginning to paint. I like to use a ceramic paint palette whenever I do a project. It allows me to get that paint out there onto a brilliant white surface, and as I go through the project, I can go back and forth between colors and start mixing. And that helps me to be a little tidier, so I'm not constantly accidentally dipping my paintbrush into the wrong colors. I always swatch out the colors I choose for a project onto a scrap piece of watercolor paper. This is a bit that was left over from cutting down the Arches 100% cotton watercolor paper down to size. It allows me to see that paint in action before I start to create with it. It's also a reminder of the project. I got kind of taken away with painting out my colors, both the watercolors for the professional grade and the student grade. And again, I'm always surprised at how brilliant the Crayola watercolors are when I start painting with them. I think I'd like to do like a light fastness test with these and see just really how effective they would be at holding their color over time. Before you begin to paint your hearts, you're going to want to get that spray bottle and spray your paper to see what it does. See the rivulets of color that happen? It makes it so every line that you make onto these card faces is completely out of your control, and you've got this beautiful chemistry experience going on with the pigment and the water. Heart shapes can be challenging for people. They're really nervous about, oh, it's not going to be a perfectly equal heart shape. Do your best to just let the heart that your hand is going to make go. Because once you're doing it onto that wet paper, it's not going to be perfect, quote unquote, anyway. So you might as well have fun embracing the swoosh that your hand makes and makes it into a heart. The easiest way I can think of to describe painting a heart is you do a loop to one direction and a loop to another. I do 2 brush strokes to create a heart, not one, although you can try it by doing it in one full brush stroke and seeing what kind of wonderful shape that creates. You don't have to create 2 cards at once like I do. I am very impatient, so I always like to have 2 projects going at the same time.
So these have both dried overnight and are definitely dry to the touch. But before we take off the tape, which we can do right now, I like to take this moment to use the tape when I'm making a card and put some colored pencil around the edges. It creates kind of a border for the work that we're making, and I think it's really fun. How I'm choosing my border colors, though, is based on this awesomeness that the experience yesterday painting created. I mean, this is just the coolest sets of patterns of a real focused heart here. And then you can still see right here, there's this vision of a heart that once was the orange one, and then the vision over here of the green one and the blue one, just this diffuse craziness. And then let's see, let me get you a little bit closer so you can see all of these fractal patterns. I think I'm using that word right, and they look like icicles or snowflakes. I just think this is beautiful. I want to highlight some of the colors in each of these, and let's look at this one again. Such an interesting combination of sharp focus and really out of focus, just wild and spontaneousness going on. And the difference between the two qualities of watercolor, the two qualities of paper is, I think, fascinating, because we still had those fractals over here on the Canson XL with the Crayola. But look at what they're like over here. It's granulated even. I didn't expect that, because this isn't granulating watercolor, but it's creating these interesting patterns. Just kind of, at least for me, they hold my attention, and they make the shape of a heart so much more interesting. I brought over my color charts. This is my one for my Prismacolors, and this is my one for my Faber-Castell Polychromoses. Chromoses. Is that how you say a plural? Chromos? Or we're not going to decide. Polychromoses is what I say goes. So I just kind of sat these next to the cards, or the card faces, and came to a conclusion about colors. Over here I was really drawn to the bright neon pink. So hello, I was going to choose my neon pink color, but it was a little bit different, a little brighter, a little warmer than the opera pink. So I also brought in this processed red, which is essentially another pink color, and I plan to create the border using these two colors. I compared my two color charts of these are my artist quality colored pencils, to my colors here over on the watercolor side with Crayola watercolors and Canson XL paper, and I just wasn't able to pull it together. I'm like, I don't really like how I was really drawn to the red, but I didn't like how any of the reds kind of meshed with what was going on. And then I was like, duh, Crayola, why am I bothering with my fancy pencils over here when I should just go see about my Crayola watercolor and my Crayola regular colored pencils? Perhaps that's where my shades are. And lo and behold, that is what I found. So I didn't use watercolor pencils. It wasn't the right feel for me. But I was like, I really love what's going on here. There's so much more heat on this card than there is on this card. So I chose my red and my orange. Not my red orange, my red and my orange. And I'm gonna do a similar technique of pulling those two colors together over here as I am with these two colors.
I love how the tape allows me to create a perfectly straight line. The hyperlapse makes it seem like this was really quick. It actually took about 14 minutes to get nice solid lines on watercolor paper with watercolor pencils. The paper is textured, so you're gonna have to actually color, not draw a line to create the border that you'd like. Remember, when you are removing painter's tape from your paper, pull at an angle. It is so important, and it makes it so that that pull of the tape is clean and none of the paper gets ripped away. Don't they look great already, just with the simple splash of hearts and an outline? I did notice, however, when I was pulling the tape back, that we had a little bit of leakage here on the Crayola watercolor one. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you one of my favorite ways of cleaning up edges of that nature. It may or may not work. I've never had this happen when I was using a school grade, a kindergarten watercolor. So we'll see how this works, but I thought I'd show you. I have this Princeton Velvet Touch blender brush. It's a really, I've already got water on it, so let's make sure I don't spill water. It's a really stiff bristle brush. I think you can hear them. Can you hear them? almost like straw, but you get a little bit of water on it. And this brush is really great for cleaning up watercolor edges. I'm not entirely certain it's going to work here perfectly, but I think it's going to improve the appearance. You got to be careful, especially if you're working on a paper like Canson XL, a paper I love, 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 but this is a really stiff brush. So you can begin to tear the paper. So let's see, and I'm just using a simple tissue, not paper towel, something a little gentler. And we're gonna, yeah, it's erase. It's basically a watercolor eraser. This is, once again, the Princeton Velvet Touch blender brush. I love this thing. Fresh, clean, crisp edges. Yay!
So yeah, it's interesting, right? This one, I'm almost feeling like I could call it done and be happy about giving this to anyone. Really love everything that's going on with these flames here and these hearts up here and all the fractals and then the color complements going on. This one I'm still feeling needs something, and I'm kind of oscillating between choosing kind of an indigo color, a light one, to fill in here because it's one of my favorite colors, or a metallic, not silver, gold. Ooh, what about a combination?
I love painting with tube fresh watercolors. Everything is so incredibly juicy. What I'm doing right now is I'm adding some water to my paper before I add pigment. The reason I did this is because, as you can see on the palette, this indigo is a really strong color. I wasn't entirely certain I wanted its full strength as the negative painting part on this piece. Negative painting is when you are painting the shapes around the lines and the shapes that are already there in existence. So what you see me doing is trying to paint around the hearts while maintaining all those fractals and those patterns. I was going for a variety of intensities at this point. I really wanted a combination of some really dark blue mixed in with some more watery blue. I was just having a wonderful time with the interplay of these washes of indigo mixed in with all of the fractals and the lines that I saw. I really was hesitant about putting paint inside the heart shapes. I didn't know if that would become too overwhelming or if it would take away from the overall heart pattern, really, because once you start filling in all those white spaces, would you have anything except for random lines left behind? It was at this point that I'm like, I really want some shimmer on this. Now, if you've ever used metallic paint, you know this is true. You need to put water directly into the paint pan and let it set. I probably let that set there for about 5 minutes. That will help get that pigment going and ignited. Otherwise, what you have is really kind of a pathetic, watery shimmer, and that's not what you want. You really want that metallic pop. That will come with patience. I know a lot of people begin with metallic paint and they think they bought the wrong kind. You can't just take a wet brush and start brushing it against dry palettes or dry pans and expect it to be shiny. I didn't want gold everywhere, so I selectively chose 3 of the heart shapes and got in there with my tiniest brush.
I am very pleased with how both of these card faces, these 2 little messy love-centered paintings turned out, but we're not quite ready to adhere them to their colored cardstock. Bear with me. These, yes, are meant to go on top of cards, but they're also just, they're little experiences of art, and I think that whenever you take the time to create just special pieces like this, even if it's designed to go onto cards, I really think you should sign your work. So before we get into adhering these faces, I think we should sign them. I like to sign works in a similar material to what I have used. That's going to be a little harder here. Over here is where I typically like to sign pieces, but it's got a lot of things going on here, a lot of interest. So I think I'm going to place it over here. And what I like to do is I have a glyph. And a glyph is just a little symbol that you make up that is symbolic or representational of you. I just did a simple combination of my two initials as a single shape. Ooh, that was too much. Let's use my thing here, my little blotter. And that has become my glyph. That's how I sign all artwork, from prints to large-scale drawings, paintings, pre-coloring pages, and as you can see here, cards, the card art that I make. It is a sign of both that I made it, but that I valued it enough to put my signature on. Typically, I would let that dry a little bit longer, but we want to move on to the last stage of card making, which is assembling them. So we have our card front and we have our cardstock. I'm going to move my palette because, knowing me, it's very likely I'm going to set my card right in the middle of my wet paint. So I'm sure there's a way to put it on in that's very mathematically oriented. I'm not that kind of person. I like to eyeball. I like to give the recipients of my cards the option of keeping this and putting it someplace that makes them happy. So how I like to send cards where the piece on the front may be of real interest to people is I use something called a photo corner. It's a clear little sticker that's got a little pocket right there. And if I put that right there and then stick it onto my paper, I like to do one at a time because it's just, they move really easily. And you want to square your art. And once it's square, trying to keep it nice and still, stick one of those photo corners down. There you go. Add one more to each corner. Of course, I also send out cards knowing they could very well be enjoyed for the moment and then recycled. It's no longer ours to control. It's no longer ours to say what happens to it. And there's something really important about sending art out into the world with that intention that this doesn't belong to me anymore. Once I put that stamp on it and it's been mailed out, or it goes with a gift, or it goes on its own, this is the gift in and of itself. The person who receives the gift, it is their right or privilege to decide what to do with it. And I really like that practice. I think it makes me a better artist, a more generous artist. It also makes me less precious about my work. So this one's ready to go. I will do this one off camera and I'll show it to you in just a moment. Well, I'm very happy with how these cards turned out. I'm especially surprised at how great this one turned out because I was a little nervous as I was going through. I'm like, that is messy. But it turned out into something that I'm really proud of and I'm excited to share with my husband. This one's for my son. It's kind of symbolic because I used the watercolors that we used to use when he was a little boy. He's now 23. So I'm very happy with how these turned out. They're going to be paired with some yummy treats because what is Valentine's Day without a little bit of candy? I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and that if you did, you'll give it a like. And even better, if you know that there's somebody out there that enjoys following along with tutorials of this kind of natural, not really judging the criteria of how it turns out. Maybe yours even turns out better than the instructors. If they like this kind of an art project, please send this along to them, share this video. It does my channel a huge service, and it spreads what I'm trying to spread, which is a love and a joy of art and of making it a part of our daily lives, and then also something that we share with others. Until our next video, happy Valentine's Day.